Welcome to the Brunch Committee. Wow. Okay.
Sorry. Carry on.
That's okay. I think we should introduce ourselves. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Amenye.
And with us we have...
Beatrice! Okay, B.
So, this is our second attempt at recording this episode. Midweek on the 10th of March, in fact, we spent a good few hours, didn't we? About four?
Yeah, we did.
4 hours, if you like.
Yeah.
Recording. And someone's audio wasn't great. And
someone's audio.
It was the technical gremlins. So this sort has graciously given us more of her time. We really appreciate it. To re-record this episode.
It wasn't planned.
So B, how are you? Welcome to the Brunch Committee.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here having brunch with you gals.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's Mother's Day today on the day that we're recording. So, yeah, it's been a nice day, chilling and looking after my mama.
The queen bee of cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling us just off the call all the food that you made, scratch. Would you like to share with you what you made?
Oh, go on then. So, I made a butternut squash and butterbean curry. I made some homemade chapati, fried some plantain, and rice and peas. And it was all vegan, of course. And it was wonderful. Yeah, it was really good.
We did say she's a good cook, guys.
Amenye, how's your week been? How's it been since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, it's not been long, but yeah, it's been good. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what happened since. I had a very lazy day, to be honest, today. So I called my mom, obviously Mother's Day. I made some kind of a veggie breakfast. B would have been proud. So I made some plant-based sausages and some egg fried bread. But yeah, it was really tasty. But yeah, I've never done that before. So yeah, a veggie brunch today. How about you, Dan?
I didn't have brunch. I woke up at 11 o'clock. So by the time I was hungry, it was like 3 o'clock. So I just had food. Which is
what does that mean?
What kind of food?
Don't you always have food, Dan?
What do you usually eat?
I feel like brunch is its own category of sustenance. Food is everything else. So I ordered.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, I ordered takeaway on Saturday, and so I ordered an extra bit. So it was the Sri Lankan takeaway, and they had this aubergine curry. So I had some of that with some broccoli.
You trying to be healthy. I feel like you always have broccoli.
No,
honestly, the amount of broccoli I buy on a regular basis now, because my nutritionist has told me that I need to eat more brassicas, apparently.
Is that the only one?
Well, no, there's like kale and Brussels sprouts and cauliflower, but I like broccoli. And
I love kale.
I like broccoli. I love kale. Yeah. Oh, wonderful.
I like kale. I tend to have kale as a rice replacement. So whenever there's something that needs rice, I will usually have kale, except in this instance I have broccoli.
So you couldn't have kale and then a side of broccoli as the side of kale. Kale with a side of kale.
He loves his broccoli.
We need to stop shaming him about his broccoli. But every time we speak, I'm going to have broccoli.
No, I think it was when we were so confused when you mentioned having a chicken and broccoli sandwich, and we were like...
He was like, no, broccoli on the side. And we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But the way he said he's going to have it was a
sandwich.
Can you imagine a sandwich?
Yeah.
A chicken.
That was another level.
Oh, too funny.
Oh, God.
So I feel like we should introduce B like in the sense that how we all know B.
Yeah.
I think Amenye, would you like to tell the audience how we know B?
Yes, so you guys know me and Dan met on the bus. That's how we know B too. So basically we're just going around making friends with people on buses. But she worked with us as well. So we essentially did not let her not be friends with us, basically. We just spoke to her. And so yeah, we used to wait at the same, like, we worked at the same place, used to get the same bus, and buses in Bristol are ridiculous.
Oh my
and where
God.
we worked, yeah, we essentially had to, there was like one bus an hour or something. So, and they were always late. So you would just end up standing around waiting for the bus, and why not? Perfect time to make friends. So yeah. That's how it would be. And then she left us and went to London.
I did, but I do miss Bristol, and we're still in touch, so that's really
Yeah,
nice.
we are.
Also, yeah, and Amenye and I actually used to live together. See, you just talk to someone.
Yes,
while you're waiting
it's
at the bus stop. You never know what might come from it.
Yeah, and then move in with that. The rest is history.
Exactly.
Speaking of history, it's almost a week ago now, but International Women's Day was the beginning of this week, and we did prepare or sort of have a little think about people we wanted to talk about who were important in our lives in terms of influence, people we looked up to, and yeah, so we put some thoughts together on that. So Amenye, have you got a few people you want to mention for International Women's Day?
I do indeed. So I have like 3 people I would like to mention. So the first one is Mallory Blackman, who is, I think, one of my first impressions when I was younger. So she is a British writer, and she wrote Noughts and Crosses. So she's written a lot of other books, but for me, Noughts and Crosses was my first, the first books that I read that were of hers. And she is awesome just because she is essentially in that young and teenage novels and books. And she's the only, well, she's not the only, but for me, she was the first Black writer and Black female writer that I kind of saw who's not just in that sort of part of the book industry in terms of young and impressionable, but essentially she is also not just seen as, oh, another Black writer. It is young novels, but also she makes a point to kind of reference things like so in terms of like race and things like that. So obviously Noughts and Crosses is essentially if we were in a world where Blacks were seen as more the higher race, quote unquote, in terms of the way it was when it was slavery that white people bought and sold Black people. So if it was the other way round, so that was quite an impressionable book for me. But she's also done in 2014, she joined other authors in supporting the Let Books Be Books campaign, which basically seeks to stop books from being labeled as for girls or for boys. And I think that's such a good thing to do, because you shouldn't really have that, because that's where it kind of gets, especially when in the field that she's in, which is younger and impressionable people, to be kind of seen as, oh, I should be reading for boys or for girls. I think you shouldn't have that. So another person that I would like to mention is Toomey. So she is an Australian weightlifter and CrossFit Games winner. So she's won like 4 times. And the first time I saw her was Netflix does the CrossFit Games, and they just show it. And I love watching like competition shows. And when she first came, she lost like twice and then came back, and she was like stronger and better. And she's won like 4 times, but she can compete against the boys. And she is known as one of the strongest. So she is the strongest female, is what she's known as when you win the CrossFit Games. But they always say that she's just the strongest person because she beats the boys as well. And it's amazing to see that. My last one before I let other people talk is Mary Seacole. So she is one that I've only recently found out about. So she was a Jamaican who moved to England in like 1850s. But she essentially, like, when she moved, it was during like the Crimean War. So she offered to help because she was a nurse, and she offered to help to go to the war and essentially as a volunteer nurse. And she was basically like, her offer was met with racism, and basically she was refused to go. So instead of her saying, you know what, fine, okay, if you don't want me to go, she raises the money herself and essentially funds herself to go there. And she basically like helps them. So she was there at the time of Florence Nightingale, but like throughout history and because of everything that happens, like you don't know her, you don't really like know about her. And like I said, I only recently found out about her. So it's just interesting to know that when you want to help and somebody says no and they meet you with racism, instead of you just saying, you know what, bye, she was like, actually, I'm going to help because those people need me. And she went and actually did this herself. So I haven't read this book, but she also wrote Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands. And this is where she talks about like basically everything she did in terms of like going and helping out on these wars and stuff like that. So she's an inspiration to me. And yeah, those are my inspirations. There's many more, but those are the few that I've picked.
I think that was really interesting, especially when you mentioned about Mallory Blackman, let books be books. I think for me that's always when I was growing up, I just read books. I just generally found it interesting.
Yeah.
And for me, a person who I guess I don't identify, strictly as what society calls male, or or the other end of the spectrum, which may be female. I guess I'm sort of maybe in the middle somewhere. I've always felt that way, and so I would just read what I wanted to read. And so I can't remember which book it was, but it was a Julie Bloom book, and Julie Bloom books are traditionally aimed at girls, aren't they? Or they are perceived to be, mainly because of the biological issues that she talks about, the physical issues. And I remember just reading one just out of curiosity because it was in the library, and I picked it up and I read it. And I remember a teacher saying, "Oh, that's a girl's book. What are you reading that for?" And I was devastated. I was like, I thought it was interesting.
And it's really such an impressionable age to kind of think, oh, I can't read this. And if it's called out, I guess also in front of everybody, you kind of go, like, a lot of the times when you're at school, you just want to blend in and you just want to be normal.
Exactly, yeah. So especially at the age I was 10 or 11. It was quite a difficult time in my life around that time anyway. My father had just passed away as well at that time. I was starting to come into myself as to who I was. It was a very formative age. And to have a teacher sort of pull that out. When in fact, she really should have been celebrating about that I was reading at all.
Yeah, definitely.
That is a big issue, isn't it? Getting kids to read.
I don't know anybody who only reads books that are considered to be for their gender. Like, there's always like one book that is you love, and I don't know anybody who's like, oh, I only read these kind of books, or I only read romance books, and I only read this. Like, I don't know anybody who kind of always fits into that stereotypical.
I think it's the way that they try to market them though as well. I feel like they already like give a gender to some like particular genres of books, and then they market it in that way. So then you kind of like, it starts like you mentioned from such a young age. And even as you get older, some of the romance books, they are, although anyone can read romance, they're still marketed for women.
Women, yeah.
So, like, you just see it in the colours that they use and where they put them, all the rest of it. So.
Yeah.
Marketing is a huge thing. People, and it's arbitrary. There's no real reason behind it, except that they've just chosen a demographic that they can make some money off. And so we're going to throw everything at it. Everything that we think is supposed to be for that demographic, we just throw it at that. And that is quite harmful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, for International Women's Day, I have got 3 people I want to just briefly mention. One of them is Amy Lee, who is the lead singer of Evanescence. Now, for me, we around the age of, I want to say sort of 13, 14, 15, their music was really influential in my life, and it still is to this day. I still listen to them, I'm still a big fan. I still follow their career quite closely. And I feel like her music, her integrity as an artist, and her ability to use her voice has really inspired me in a way that maybe not many other artists have. It definitely has made an impact into the way that I listen to music and the way that I think about music, from hearing her words and her lyrics and her music from such an early age, and more recently seeing her being quite politically active with the Headcount movement, which is a organisation that encourages people. They go to gigs and they get people to sign up to vote. This last year in America, there's been a real big issue with the most recent elections, and it's a bipartisan issue. They don't favour either side. They just go and tell people you need to vote. Here, make it really easy for them. However, Amy Lee, she does speak more recently. She has chosen to use her platform to speak up on things that she believes in, and I think right now is a really important time to sort of stand up and be counted, and to really voice your opinion. And if you have a voice, and if you have a platform, you should be using it. And it's difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy to stand up and voice your opinion, even if you are, beloved in the popular opinion. To stand up and say, actually, this is wrong, or this is right, or I believe this. And she's someone who has done that, in my opinion. The second person is also another singer. She's the former lead singer of a band called Nightwish, but she's a solo artist, a classically trained singer. Her name is Tarja Turunen, and I'm probably pronouncing that name incredibly wrong. She's a Finnish singer. She lives in Spain, and people who are familiar with sort of the metal world will know her and know the band Nightwish. And she left the band when she was fired from the band in 2005 in a way that I would consider maybe to be controversial. I think there was issues around women in metal, women in that music scene, that instantly she was dismissed for being a diva, for being demanding and difficult to work with. And I think these are words that we've heard used about women, not just in the music industry, but in general, in the professional world, in entertainment world. We hear these sorts of words used about women. Obviously, I wasn't in the band, so I have no idea if that was the ins and outs. But if you get a flavour, you get a sense. If these are the words being bandied around, it doesn't sound, it doesn't sit well. Anyway, so she's forged this amazing new solo career since, and she seems to be in such a happy place in her life. I just think she's really made something of herself from what was potentially a devastating experience in her life, and that I find really quite inspirational. And the last person I want to talk about is Meera Syal, and she is an Asian comedian, actress. She was in Goodness Gracious Me, Humans at Number 42. Those are the 2 main things that I remember her from. She's been on so many radio things as well, like radio comedies, dramas. And for me, growing up as an Asian person, you don't really see yourself represented much in the entertainment industry, hardly in the music industry. And if you are on TV, there's usually a certain type of role for you. And I feel like she forged her and her colleagues they all worked together in Goodness Graciously and Kumar's. They really pushed boundaries, really made it. They stepped outside the roles that were defined for being an Asian person on TV and really made it funny and enjoyable. And for me, growing up, I was like, oh, I don't just have to see. There are people who look like me in comedy. There are people who look like me in TV acting and doing this and that. Now, she is just the one actress, and they are, the comedy troupe in general. It's about 5 or 6. There's not many of them, and hopefully, as things progress down the years, there'll be more and more Asian people who sort of step up into pop culture, into music, into TV.
Yeah.
But until we get to that time, I think Meera has been such an inspiration to me. But yeah, I don't know if you had any people you wanted to mention, any shout outs you wanted to give?
Yeah, mine are going to be brief. Be really quick. There's 3 women that have been on the news quite a bit this week, last week and this week, ahead of an interview between Oprah and Harry and Meghan. And that's Dr. Shola Mos-Shogbamimu. I've definitely butchered that surname, and I do apologise. Kelechi Okafor and Gina Yashere. They have been on the news, like on Sky News, like discussing very kind of like, I guess, silly conversations that as a country we're still having, like very juvenile conversations. Is this country racist? Is the monarchy racist? They've been giving their kind of like opinions up until like the episode aired, and also after the episode, the interview aired, just like, talking about their reactions, kind of like whether it was expected, what does it mean. Yeah, and they've just been brilliant. They're like angry black women that are using their platform for good. They're standing up against racism and racist institutions. And I just hope that they're mentally and, like cared for, because it's so hard to put yourself out there. I know that they've all said that they're receiving lots of death threats and things, and they're being trolled. Ridiculous volumes, but yeah, I think they're fantastic, and if you haven't heard of any of them, go check them out. Dr. Shola Mos has a book called This Is Why I Resist. Kelechi Okafor is a podcaster. She's a pole dancer. She's an actress. She's a director. She's a writer. She does so much, and she has a brilliant podcast called Say Your Mind, unofficially called Suck Your Mum. I love it. And it is brilliant. She it's just fire, and it comes out every Monday. Go check it out. Gina Yashere, come on, she's like old British giant, so she's just hilarious. But she lives out in LA, but she joined them for these interviews, and there was like one perfect memeable moment where one of them says something. I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's been turned into like a really great animation, and then it's now available on t-shirts and stuff like that. It was like a reaction to something they said, and someone's gone giving the side eye, and another one's like about to spit out their drink, and it's like perfect. It's like okay. Yeah, I recommend checking that out. Yeah, so that's really short and sweet. Definitely go and look them up.
There you go.
Yeah, Gina Yashere, I absolutely love. She's so funny, absolutely hilarious, and I definitely will look this up.
Yeah, we should get the shirts, guys.
Yeah, we should.
Podcast supporting podcast, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Meghan and Harry, because I don't know if people know, they've been in the news recently.
Just a little bit.
You cannot avoid it.
Cannot avoid it. Although this week, I think the more recent events of what's happening in London today, we'll come on to that, have somewhat taken a bit of the fuel out of the fire. Yeah. But it's sort of an important discussion to discuss the interview with Oprah and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Now, normally I would have been one of those people who said, oh, royal family, I'm not bothered, I don't really care, blah, blah, blah. But I think this goes beyond the issues of whether or not you're a fan of the royal family or not. this goes right to the core issue of racism, privilege, and institutions, especially here in the UK. And it goes to show the way people have been responding. This story has been a proxy for people to show their true opinions.
Yeah.
In the way that they think about issues about race, about the press, about their royal family, but specifically, and also about mental health. I don't know if you guys want to sort of share your thoughts on what's been going on recently.
So I think I spoke to somebody about this yesterday, and it was actually fun because she's British and like born and bred here. And one of the things that she mentioned was the fact that it just shows how the UK has not been ready to kind of have that mirror held up to them to show how racist the nation is. And that's where the backlash and stuff has come from, because even in terms of obviously when the Black Lives Matter thing happened, it was easy for it to kind of be like, oh, but it's in America. It's in America. Whereas now this has kind of held that mirror up to say it's not just in America. And nobody was ready for that. And I think that's where that backlash is then coming from, because it kind of comes down to sometimes like a lot of it is they go, oh, okay, this has happened and it's racist. And they go, but I'm not racist. And it's like, yeah, but it is still racist. It's not, I'm not saying you are, but it is. And that's where I think that whole thing is like, they're not ready to kind of admit there's still those racist, systematic issues that have been there from the beginning. And
yeah. I was listening to Any Questions on BBC Radio 4 just over this weekend, and there was a question raised from a listener who was a grandmother, I believe. She was a white listener herself. And so the question was, am I a racist if I've inquired about my grandchildren's skin colour? And she was saying that it was in the context of, they talk about, their eye colour, they're going to look like their auntie, their uncle, their father, brother, mother, sister, hair colour, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And so, obviously, the answer to that question is, well, no, it's just in the context. The context is everything. And obviously, we don't know the full context of what happened
that's
here.
true.
However, given everything else that has happened, and given what we know of the royal family, it's hard to believe that this was an innocuous question.
Yeah,
exactly. And if you think, and like you said, it's context is everything. It's not just a harmless conversation of, oh, I wonder if they're going to have your skin tone, if they're going to have your eyes, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's concerns of how dark the child would be and what that would mean for the monarchy. That is racism. That is, it's clear. And for anyone to say, oh no, but, and I think the British people, like British public, really love to like deflect and to from the actual issues in society, so we never get anywhere, and that's why we're so far behind. So instead of like saying yes, that is racism, they'll gaslight you and say, oh no, I don't think it is. I think that I would do that, and I'm not racist, and I've had the same conversation with my partner. But you haven't had concerns on what that would mean for your family. You haven't, because if your child came out closer to your dad's race or skin tone, what is that going to mean for your family? You're going to go put him on a mountain and say you can't live here anymore. You like just don't stop being ridiculous. Like, take a step back and be honest, because
it's not personal.
Yeah,
I think the whole taking things personal is the bit that I think, like you said, it's like, oh, but I would say this and I don't mean it this way, and it's like, yeah, but I'm not saying you are racist. I'm saying this situation is not right, and if you can admit this situation is not right, it doesn't mean you're racist. It doesn't mean and I think that's where the issue kind of comes down to. It's also the whole not all men thing. It's the same thing. It's just
people become so defensive if they feel like that they're being attacked, but you're not actually being attacked if you're actually aware of the conversations that are happening. If you remove yourself as an I and they're talking about me. No, we're talking about society and the institution, as it was referred to in that document, and they are racist. That we saw so many like different ways in how they No Racism Manifest, and how they've treated Megan in comparison to Kate, and also like the press and the public. They will always tell you that they don't like Megan, that Megan is a money grabbing whore or whatever they will say about her, like, you know, nasty things, and it's just
trying to climb up the social ladder and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like, where is this coming from?
We have the direct comparisons of the stories about avocados, for example. So, when Kate Middleton was eating avocados during her pregnancy, she's eating a nutritious, you know, meal to help her baby, blah blah blah. Whereas when Megan was eating avocados, she was encouraging the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest and encouraging slave labor.
Yeah, and it was a human rights crisis.
Yeah.
And when Kate Middleton was holding her pregnancy bump, she was, you know, embracing her child, blah blah blah.
And it was endearing.
Endearing, exactly. When Megan does it, she's showing off or was pride or whatever it is, whatever the accusation
vanity
was.
And that's one thing that I didn't get. Like, I don't know any pregnant mother that doesn't touch her bump.
Yeah.
And that's something that you will notice in people in your own life. So for you to see that and be like, yeah, what is she doing? And you're like, what, have you never ever seen a pregnant woman before? Like, ever? Not even in your own vicinity or in your own friendship group, but like, you've never seen one? So it was just, that's where like the far-fetched thing happens. And I think the most detrimental thing was the fact that they couldn't ever say anything. So because they never said anything, it was just kind of left hanging, which kind of, it doesn't mean it's true, but because nobody's saying no, it isn't, it makes you think it is. Yeah. So that's where the whole problem thing happens. And one of the ones that I found really interesting was also when she mentions the fact that the time where there was a lot of like newspaper reports and news things about her, she essentially said that was the time when it was like she'd been out twice in 4 months. And because there was so much about her, I didn't even realize she hadn't been out or you hadn't seen her, because she even says, I was everywhere but nowhere. And it's such a like weird thing to think about after you've seen it, because you wouldn't have known she wasn't going out and she wasn't allowed to go see her friends because she had to lay low because there was news things about her all the time. Because I remember being like, I don't care about the royal family. Why are they even posting this?
Yeah.
But I would have thought she was out and that's why they were talking about her, not because she just wasn't.
And I think one of the points that was raised, it's interesting to note, is that the royal family the royal household as an institution has a good relationship with the press. They host Christmas parties or dinners and galas. Yet they couldn't seem to influence the story or help maybe shine a better light on the relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan and the royal household. For some reason, they had absolutely no power over that. But, you know, when the story comes out about Prince Philip crashing his car when driving out of Sandringham, suddenly that's all been hushed up and gone away. Now he's back to being beloved again.
And their silence is like them being kind of like, in a way, they're complicit.
Yeah.
Sorry. They could have put all of these kind of stories to bed and disprove them very easily, especially like the one about the flower girl dresses. And there was a story that ran that, you know, Meghan was a bully and she made Kate cry. And actually we learned in this interview that it was actually the opposite that happened. And they saw kind of like how the press were hounding her, writing these stories, and that obviously does something to someone's mental health. And as Meghan kind of like mentions in the interview, that she was feeling, you know, she was feeling really low and down and didn't really want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And even that she tried to reach out for help, and it's that they have HR there, which I think is
I found that so fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you find that fascinating?
Yeah. They wonder what it takes to apply for a job with their HR. Like,
yeah. Seriously, they need to say like you, Dan, because then you'd be like, no, we will stand for this. You do need help, and we will get you help.
Exactly. It wouldn't be a case of
Yeah.
how would this look like? You know,
Yeah.
you're telling me that you're suicidal, but I'm gonna say no, you're not gonna get
Yeah.
any help that you need. So
Yeah.
it's just
The fact that it's lots of people then also had the backlash of, well, I say the backlash, but they all kind of then were saying, we don't believe her. Why would she be suicidal? All of this. And it's kind of like, but how do you know? And how you don't know me? You don't know what I was going through. But also, I read a comment somewhere where it essentially said, all these people who are essentially not being compassionate to Meghan, of her, basically from her coming out and saying she was suicidal, she might not see those comments, but your friends who might be in the same situation will, and won't be able to come out to you and won't be able to come to you for help. So how would you feel if it was the other way around? And obviously actually reaching out and asking for help is probably the hardest part.
Yeah, definitely.
So
This story with Meghan and Harry came out just over a week ago, 7th of March. A week later, it's still bubbling over. However, since this week has begun, we've had the story of Sarah Everard, which has been unfolding. On the 3rd of March, I guess she was registered missing around that point. And then on the 9th of March, on the Tuesday, they had arrested a member of the Metropolitan Police, a police officer, in connection with her disappearance. Then they announced on the Wednesday, this is after midnight with the first announcement, that human remains had been found and that they were continuing to question suspects on her disappearance. And there's been accusations to the Metropolitan Police of mishandling this investigation. Yesterday and today there have been protests going on in London, in Clapham Common, and out. Literally just before recording, there was a lie down, or is it a lion, I think the word is, outside the Parliamentary Square.
yeah.
So people have been kicking off, basically. It has brought up a lot of issues, and coincidentally, we have the parliamentary bill for greater police authority for non-violent protests, in terms of being able to arrest people and move them out of the way. And then today we see the way on the news these protesters were being manhandled, being pushed onto the floor, shoved around, being stepped on in some instances after peaceful protests. And I don't know what you guys have to think about this.
I saw that picture of the girl basically like being pinned down by I don't know how many of them. And yeah, it's really, I don't know, it's just, I feel like this year has just been exhausting, to be honest. And this is just kind of another thing on top of it, because I remember hearing about the announcement apparently basically saying, oh, women should try not walking at night and stuff. And it's kind of like, really, that's another thing. So now it's us who we already know, like all girls are always kind of like, oh, message me when you get home, or this, like, make sure you when you leave, you do, like, you have things like, as a girl you're told scream fire instead of rape, because that will always be people will come for that. And you're always told all these things that you have to do and you have to do, and like that still doesn't protect you because you're not the one who's actually doing it. It's still not in your hands, and it's kind of like frustrating that it's then another thing that, because that's the thing, we always, like, I used to be that person who will always be on the phone. If I have to walk somewhere and it's dark, I'll be like, stay on the phone with me, because you just want that extra person. Or you'll always have, like, you'll hear footsteps and you'll put you put the number in and then just be ready to kind of dial it. Or there's always that thing, and it's like I said, it's just exhausting. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, and the fact that all of those things that you said, we learn that at such a young age. We're always in a way kind of like taught that the streets are not a safe place for us, and they're not a safe place for us in the day or even at night. You're always kind of like subject to maybe like sexual harassment, or in worst cases sexual. It's all terrible. Sexual assault, or violence, or being abducted, murder, all of this, and it's like scary. We kind of like check our routes. We make sure we walk on main roads where it's like well lit. We either have someone on the phone to like speak to, or we put one headphone in and leave the other one out, so that we can listen to music or have a conversation with someone on the phone, but also we're then aware of our surroundings, so we can hear if someone's kind of like creeping up behind you. You have your keys ready in your hands to use as a weapon, or just to, as soon as you get to your door, it's not like a faffing bit, because you just want to get in and home so quickly. It's obviously terrible that's what has happened, and it's even worse that it's the person that they have in custody is a serving police officer of quite a high command or something, because he's one that would have a weapon. Is what it is. He said he's an armed response one. So I was just going to say, I think like Amenye said, it's exhausting, and I think it's kind of like it's brought up so many feelings for a lot of people, because it's quite triggering that we have, there was a study that said 97% of women have been sexually assaulted, and so 97%, that's probably everyone knows a woman that has gone through this, or who has been harassed on the streets, and that's just a scare. That figure should scare people, and instead what we're seeing is, when women are now kind of like supporting each other, talking about some horrible situations that they've been in, we're finding men, basically doing what white people do when we talk about police brutality. They're saying not all men, and it's kind of like when you talk about Black Lives Matter and people say all lives matter, that's exactly what you sound like when you say not all men. We know it's not all men, but we are dying at the hands of men. So
not all men, but 97% of women. So just something to note. Nearly all women.
Yeah.
I think the conversation has been happening for a while. Actually, it's been happening for ages, that this is not a women's problem. This is a problem with men, and men, the space they take up in society, the microaggressions, not just the microaggressions, the plain aggressive behaviour that they exhibit, the general behaviours that are allowed to continue, and to sort of the way people talk about and sort of objectify women in conversations casually. These things have been allowed to and actively encouraged in conversations. And growing up is this whole thing of like when you have a young boy and a girl, say they're both brought up in a family, a traditional heteronormative family, the boy will be encouraged to, go get him, Tiger, go and ask that girl out. If she says no, keep resisting it, keep pushing, keep asking. Then eventually the story's like, oh, I wore her down and she eventually said yes. Well, what does that say? And then the girl, you're in the same conversation, you're telling your daughter, look, I want to meet this boy before you go out with him. Who is he? What's he doing? He's not allowed in my room. No child of mine is going to be. And what you're sending the message out with one side of your mouth, and on the other side is sending another message.
Yeah. You're basically making your son what you're afraid will happen to your daughter, which is kind of the messed up part of it.
Society has perpetuated this problem. We've allowed it to grow. And I think finally people are fed up. So, I say finally people are fed up, that's wrong to say. People have been fed up for a long time. I think it's just finally things are coming to a point where they're more visible.
Yeah.
And visibility is important. It doesn't mean that this movement just started. This has been going on. Yeah.
And to
ages.
be honest, I think in terms of like COVID and stuff, I feel like because we've slowed down, we've been able to kind of push these things that we've always had. Because if you think of, she's obviously not the first person that's been gone through this, but it's more visible because there's not as much going on. So people are kind of like, no, this is the last one. This should be the last one. And that was the same thing with obviously George Floyd and you now because of COVID. And that's been, I guess, the positives of obviously this pandemic, because it slowed things down for people to then go, no, we need to actually be having these conversations. That what else are you doing? Let's have these conversations that we're supposed to have been having in the first place.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what you said. It's like because outside is kind of like closed and the world is less busy then, so we've got less distractions, that we're able to see it for what it is, and we can see that this is gender-based violence, and it's happening at the hands of the people that were sent here to protect us. The people that are meant to serve the community, to serve and protect. And there have been lots of calls to say that there's going to be more police officers on the road. Why would we want more police officers on the road if they can cause us this harm? What we want is our society to change. We want kind of like, we need better education with men. We need to go back to like the source of the problem, not the symptom, and then having more police like on the road.
Exactly. That's the thing. It starts with education. It starts with the way we bring up our men in this society, in the way that they are told or taught how to interact with each other and with people in society and their place in society.
Yeah,
that is incredibly important. Yeah,
Definitely.
well, I feel like we've really covered. Oh, sorry. Carry on.
I know. It's like, I was just going to quickly say I saw something that really pissed me off, and it was actually by a journalist. I don't follow him. It was on Twitter, and it said because of the statistic of 97% of women have been sexually assaulted. It said you've not been sexually assaulted. You've had your boob grabbed at a Wetherspoons. That's not like you haven't been sexually assaulted. And what I really hate about that is that it's like they're looking at the most extreme and then saying this bit here, this then isn't assault because, well, you survived, it was a drunken person that grabbed your boob. How about
also,
no? And you're
why are you grabbing my boob? No. Did I give you permission to grab my boob?
Exactly.
That is... Why are you touching me? Stop touching me.
I mean, if it was flipped over onto his head and said, "Oh, I just grabbed his dick."
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
yeah,
God.
Exactly. No, it's
Whoever that's taught us
hypocrisy,
anything, keep your hands to yourself. Don't be putting your germy hands on me.
Keep your opinions to yourself, keep your mouth shut, and keep your hands to yourself, as opposed to all straight men now.
My personal space. I want it to remain my personal space.
Exactly. Well, I feel like we've really covered some topics today. I think this has been incredible.
Yeah. We could obviously go into so much more detail, but we've definitely touched on some of the key things that have happened this past week.
This week. I think,
don't worry.
Said,
I was going to say, B will be back, so we have more of these conversations. We always have these conversations together, so that's why we had to have her on for something like this, because I really enjoy having these conversations with most people, because I say most people, some people make it exhausting, but most people, because we it's a give and take. And I think we're coming from obviously this same kind of background, because we are people of color, and we're women, and Dan is obviously gay, so we are kind of coming from the same kind of place, but you all have a woman in your life. It's Mother's Day. You all have a mother. You all have a sister. Like, you will have a sister or a friend, or you kind of need to see it through their eyes as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And also see it through eyes of people that you don't even know. Like, I think that we also kind of say to men, like, oh, you have a mother, you have have a sister. And it's like, no, I don't want you to just respect women that you love and women that are in your life. Just respect women.
Yeah.
Like, how about that? Yeah. But
Yeah, definitely. It's true. That's the be all and end all. Be all
Yeah.
and end all.
Lols.
Lol. Well, on that note, we want to thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me,
didn't
friends.
really get to talk about your business. Maybe we could take a little bit of time actually
Yes.
now.
Oh,
Yes,
Just
please.
this little segment here at the end to talk about Bea and her entrepreneurial activities. So take it
Yeah.
away. Tell us a bit about what
Okay.
you do.
Right, so I have a brand called Condor Designs, and I make earrings out of polymer clay and resin, and some out of yarn. And it's just been a way for me to kind of like stay sane throughout lockdown. I started my business during lockdown, and yeah, it's going great. It's like slowly growing and thriving, and that's all what we love to hear, really. So do check them out. Dan and Amenye are big fans. They have a couple of pairs, like my great supporters. I love that.
We have just a few.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wearing the blue circle ones, what are they called now?
Playing in circles, yeah.
Yes, I was wearing that on Friday. It's a friend's birthday party online. So I was wearing that. I was wearing blue, so I had the blue earrings with my blue hair, and I had like a blue graphic eye, just to match all together. So
Loving the blue.
So where can we find you online? Where can we purchase?
Yeah.
So my website is conjodesigns conjodesigns.co.uk. And Konjo is spelled Konjo. And you can find me on Instagram at We Are Condor Designs. So yeah, like follow me, check it out, and yeah, hopefully you'll like some of my designs.
You will not regret it, guys.
We'll make sure to post the details in the description for this podcast and on the episode post on Instagram. So you can follow us on Instagram at Brunch Committee Podcast. I'm on Instagram at Dan Kumar Official.
And I'm on Instagram at Minichanda.
Our Facebook is Brunch Committee Podcast. Now, if you're listening and you're a normal listener, you'll realise we've not said a word about Drag Race. That is because part 2... Actually, no, what's happened is we've given up on Drag Race. We can't stand it anymore. No.
The US is going on too long.
Dragon.
It's
pun intended.
we have decided we wanted to give space and time to discuss the issues that we did today without rushing to talk about to get through to the end to talk about Drag Race. And even though we've given just maybe like an hour or so, even then we've barely scratched the surface on a lot of these issues. So, like Amenye said, we really want to get Bea back to talk about some of these issues in more detail, and perhaps in the context of a different point in time with things that have developed or changed. But we will be having a part 2 of this episode where Bea will be joining us again to talk about the last 2 episodes of Drag Race US and the last 2 episodes of Drag Race UK. So keep your ears open and your eyes peeled for the following episode of the Brunch Committee Podcast. See you all soon.
See ya.
Bye.